Good morning. My name is Stella Natufe, and I work for the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. Welcome to the BACP Business Education Workshop webinar series. We have adapted our regular business education workshops at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. On behalf of our Commissioner, Rosa Escareno, I want to inform you that business licenses can be processed online by visiting chicagobusinessdirect.org. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. To learn more about this program, please visit chicago.gov/business education. To help guide your businesses and employees during Chicago's reopening process, please visit chicago.gov/reopening. Also, BACP and the City of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications created Shy Biz Alerts. You can opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community. If you are interested, please visit chicago.gov/Shy Biz Alerts. We encourage all of our attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Today's webinar is entitled Financial Business Growth, presented by InUrban Strategies. At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Mr. Shelby for us to begin.
All right, thank you so much, Stella. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I know there were some audio issues that was announced. First of all, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I know it's the getting into the holiday, and we certainly appreciate your time stopping by. And as introduced, I'm Shelby Parchman, and I'm the managing partner of InUrban Strategies. And we're a consulting firm that we work mainly with nonprofits and other organizations that are focused on economic development. We do a lot of work around strategic planning, business finance, and what we call operational excellence. And that is to help organizations get their stuff together, whether it's a small business or a larger nonprofit organization. And so we have a lot of projects going on around that. But also we have projects on our own that in businesses that we run and we finance through our InUrban Ventures partnership. And I'll talk about one of those as we go through this presentation, because it's actually a good case study for some of the stuff that if you're looking to raise funding for your business, it could be a good case study for what to do and what not to do. All right, so I'd like to start every presentation with learning objectives. And so give you a teaser about what we're going to talk about and what you can expect to learn in today's presentation. Number one is how to finance the growth of your business. Number two, the top 4 strategies employed for capital infusions into your business. Then we'll talk about how do you find that capital investment, then how to secure it. And then I always like to bold things, and these are, to me, some of the most important points that I want to make, and especially since I can't do animations here. How to create the perfect pitch. And that's going to be really important no matter what you do in your business. At some point, you're going to have to pitch your business. And when you're looking for funding, you really have to get that together. And then the last one is how due diligence. And if you've never heard of that term, it's going to be something very important. And we'll talk about that in some detail and how due diligence can kill any deal. And this is whether you're raising capital from investments on the investment side, or even if you're looking to get a loan from a bank. And I'm sure there are a lot of us who've gone through this process of even trying to get a bank loan. And when they start asking for the paperwork and it's not together, that can really kill a deal quickly. All right, so as promised, 4 ways to finance your business. Number one, most people start off using their own money, their personal funds. I have this business idea, I want to get it started. Let me go dip into my piggy bank and put some money out and see and start this business, see what happens. And as the business starts growing, in many cases, we can convince some of our friends and family members to invest in our business. And that's usually how a lot of small businesses start out. And as you can see in number 2, I have the 3 F's, and but I only listed 2. And in the investment world, in the capital raising world, the 3 F's are friends, families, and fools, as they say. And because it's really and it's a joking term, we say it lovingly, but you have to be pretty foolish if you're going to invest in a startup business. But that's not to say that people don't do it. People do it all the time. And why do they do it? They normally do it because they're not investing in the business, they're investing in the person. And so that one of the things that you always have to remember as you're looking to raise capital for your business, people are more foolish when it comes to investing in the person than when they talk about investing in a business. That's not to say that you shouldn't have a great business idea, but when it's all said and done, they're trusting you to do right with their money and to make every attempt to grow the business. Number three, and I'm sure a lot of us have worked around this, including myself, and that is getting money from a bank. There's pros and cons to getting money from a bank as opposed to getting investment capital. Number one, bank loans are pretty much easier to get than investment capital in most instances. If you have a decent credit score, you have some income coming in to show that you can pay back the loan, you have a business plan, you can get a bank to lend you some money. But the downside is that in 30 days they want their first payment. Banks are really focused on getting their money back as soon as possible. Whereas when you start looking at the number four way, and that's the one I bolded because that's the one that we're going to talk about today, investment capital is a little more difficult to get, but it also gives you a lot of flexibility. So we get back to the bank loan, and the bank doesn't own any of your business. They just have a lien on all the business assets. But when you get to investment capital, now you're bringing on business partners, and these business partners want to have something to say. Now, on the other side is they don't want their money back right away. They may have some period of time they call the horizon where they say, hey, I want you to build this business, and 5 years from now, I want to talk about how I'm going to get my money back. But to go along with that, a lot of investors want to have a little more say in how you run your business. They're going to be in it. They're going to be partners. Very rarely do you find one who's just going to write you a check and say, have fun and get back to me in 5 years. But you also have a level of reporting to them to make sure that you're taking good care of their capital, being good stewards of their money. All right. So then the question is, if I want to raise investment capital, where do I start? This is a funny question because every time I talk about raising capital, first thing people talk about is, why don't you go on Shark Tank and get some money? So I thought that we just kind of like knock out the elephant in the room because Shark Tank seems to be a popular way for people to think that they can raise capital. So the first fun fact about Shark Tank, number one, is that each contestant must meet with a psychiatrist. And that's not before they go on Shark Tank, but afterwards. Because in many instances, there is a no, and people's feelings are so hurt and they're so crushed that they insist that you meet with a psychiatrist afterwards to make sure that you're not going through any strong emotional things that could cause you to do harm to yourself, believe it or not, which I found kind of strange. And this one I knew for a fact that most of the on-air deals don't go through. And why don't they go through? One of the biggest reasons is because once they go through your finances, they realize contestants have lied about the money that they're making. And trust me, I've worked with a lot of businesses who on the surface say they're making a lot of money, and we start pulling down the finances, we realize that it was all talk and the numbers say something different. One thing we don't see is we normally see a 2 to 3 minute pitch and some question and answering. But to realize that most of the pitches on Shark Tank go on for 2 hours, and then you just see a quickly edited version of what was actually presented. And most of that is for entertainment purposes and not for business purposes, right? And so, but this is some of the things that you would have to go through, even with any investor. And I can guarantee you, I'm going through a capital raise right now, and I have been in a room getting grilled, getting sent back to get more data, adjusting numbers, adjusting projections. So it's not just as simple as giving a 5 minute pitch and I'm in or I'm out. But here's a good one though. when you do pitch on Shark Tank, and you get rejected, it's good marketing. And so if you can get on Shark Tank, uh, do it for the marketing alone. And actually, that may be a better thing because you're now getting investment capital. And you may not get investment capital, but you're actually getting an increase in sales. So it makes it a lot easier to then go get other investment capital. So there is an upside to being on Shark Tank, even if your deal doesn't happen. And then the last one is, and this is important as well, more than likely you're not going to get on the show. So every year they have 100 slots uh, per 100,000 applicants, which gives you a 0.1% chance of getting a slot. And then, and I'm sorry, there's a typo, and not all, that should be not all 100, not all 10, but not all 100 make it on the show. So you look at it and saying your chances of getting on Shark Tank are very, very low. And then even if you get on Shark Tank, chances are the deal's not going to get funded. So that leads me to a conclusion that Shark Tank is not a great way to fund a business. All right. So, what is a good way to fund a business? First of all, you have to find investors, right? And people say, "Oh, well, where do I find them?" And that's kind of difficult to say because everybody it has a different situation, and it really depends on the industry and the types of capital you're looking for, the amount of capital that you need. But there are ways of finding these people, and I say, and believe it or not, this is the easiest and the most effective way to find an investor. Have one friend who has a whole lot of money. And you say, how do I find that friend? They exist, believe it or not. And it's part of is your network, right? And there's always this phrase is your network is your net worth. Well, the deal that we're doing, I actually have one wealthy friend who said, okay, I'm interested. And they actually introduced me to other wealthy friends. And not to say that you still need a good business model, but you really need that champion, someone who has the connections, who can say, okay, I'm in, and once they're in, they can then help introduce you to other people. Now, people come to me also, and this is just a quick aside, in terms of starting a nonprofit, and it's like, well, how do I get a nonprofit off the ground? And my answer is have at least one wealthy friend. And I've worked with nonprofits who are startups, and believe it or not, most of the most successful ones have had one wealthy friend or acquaintance or associate who believed in their cause and said, okay, I will seed it, and then other people come. So really think about that. It's really important to have that network. But there are other ways to do it, right? Because all of us don't have wealthy friends, but I say today, start thinking about opening up your contact list and figure out who has a few dollars that may be interested in investing in your business. One is looking at some of the startup launch platforms, and a lot of those are becoming more popular. Family offices, a lot of family offices, and these are wealthy families, and sometimes there's a single office, and sometimes they combine their resources together, and they look for new investment opportunities to invest in. And they're always out there looking. There's a lot of capital there looking to get deployed. So it's really important that if you don't know family offices, that you get to know some of them if you're looking for investment capital. The other one is incubators and accelerators. A lot of those will make an initial seed investment in your business. Once again, a lot of those are industry dependent. You see a lot of those on the tech space, but I also see some in the food space and in other spaces. The bottom line is there's a lot of money out there for tech. But believe it or not, there is a lot of money for other industries as well. It's just a little more difficult to find. Tech is always the hot thing. It's real sexy, but investors invest in more than tech. And then there are angel networks. I know there's the Hyde Park Angels and a few others that are floating around the city. And then the last one is crowdfunding sites. Crowdfunding sites they're a good start. There are more coming out. Some of them, like the GoFundMe campaigns and things like that. They're not necessarily a crowdfunding site that is based on equity, but now they do have crowdfunding sites that are more based on equity, and that people are actually investing in your business because they've changed some of the investment rules where you can actually raise capital from what they call non-accredited investors. And a lot of crowdfunding sites are building up around that. All right, so you know how to find them. Now you need to create the perfect pitch. And I say getting to the I'm interested, because when you pitch, you very rarely get a yes. And that's really not what you're going for. I think a successful pitch, whoever you're pitching to, the potential investor, will say, I'm interested. If they say yes out the gate, you've done a overwhelmingly great pitch. And I've had a few people say yes out the gate, but it was a yes, but. So I still knock that down to I'm interested, because they want more information. And so it's really important to work hard to get to that I'm interested. And so the perfect pitch actually, for me, helps you form a good foundation for your business plan as well. I know a lot of people now are not really interested in full-blown business plans, but one of the things that we do when we work with people who are looking for investment capital, uh, part of it is we want you to put together a business plan, but we feel that it starts with the pitch. And the reason that, and as I go through it, you'll understand why I say that, because the pitch actually creates a really strong outline for a business plan. It makes it really easy to make a business plan if you need one. And if you don't, you already have, you have that great pitch presentation, but you can also put together a business plan if someone asks you for it, because you've done all the research. It's just that you haven't put it in a more formal fashion. So, and I like to talk about this because as you're presenting your business, a lot of times people think it's all about the numbers, and the numbers are important, but most important is the story that you tell. And so this entire pitch presentation that you're giving to an investor is telling a really great story. So part of it is I tell people that you want to practice storytelling because that makes people much more interested. And so if you think about, go back to like English class, and you think about like you have to write a essay or story, uh, it has a beginning, right? And so you introduce yourself, why are you doing this? And then it has this narrative, and then it has a plot, a conflict, and conflicts. Who are your competitors? And then this climax is like, this is why we're going to make a bunch of money, and then you're going to give a really strong closing. And so what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about how do you tell a story to investors to help them better understand your business and how you're going to be successful in it. So the first thing is you have to solve a problem. And what I always tell people is that, and I've seen this too many times, and the problem that they're solving is usually their problem and not the rest of the world's problems. So I do a lot of work in the food business. So I'm gonna pick on some of my food clients and say, oh, I have this product that's gluten-free, right? And I create it because I have celiac disease and it works really well for me. But that may not necessarily be the rest of the world's problems, right? Or they may not be interested in your solution. So when you really think about a problem, this problem statement and the solution, think about the rest of the world's problems, not your problem. So I can tell you two businesses I started. One was a beverage business. It was a beverage that was infused with vitamin D, and a kind of a functional beverage, very similar to vitamin water, that was infused with vitamin D, calcium, and other minerals and vitamins. I did not like the drink. I was a big Coca-Cola drinker at the time. And so we have meetings. People say, "Oh, this is a great drink," and they're drinking, and I'm drinking Coca-Cola. And and people are like, "Well, you don't drink something that you created?" And I said, "Well, because it's not my problem that I'm solving. I'm solving someone else's problem." And that's how you get customers, and that's how you get sales. And I said, if I was just solving my problem, then I would have no market to sell to. So when you really think about it, think about what problem your business is solving. And it has to be a big problem. It can't be just a micro problem. And so what is the size? that problem and need on the marketplace, right? So it could be that people are looking for a gluten-free cookie, but it's not necessarily your gluten-free cookie may not necessarily be the exact way that the market wants to solve their problem. And so then you think about who is affected, right? And that's a strong part of it too, because I've worked with people, it's like they create this something, and I say, well, who is it for? And they say for everybody. I said, well, let's narrow it down. And it's like, okay, I'm creating women's shoes. And I say, so who's your market? And they say, all women. No, because, if you look at a teenager who's a woman, or say a young adult woman, their fashion style is different from a 60-year-old. So really what you want to do is start narrowing it down to really understand how many people are affected. So what I normally see when people start talking about this market need and this problem statement, they look and say, oh, like the whole world needs this. Well, yeah, but you're not selling to the whole world. Well, the entire nation needs it. Sometimes you're not selling to the entire nation. So really think about the people that you can reach, and the people that are affected, and how they're affected, and why they're affected, and how can you help solve that problem. But also turn around and use real data. So a lot of times people say, well, my friend said this, or somebody said that, or but have you did some research and understand, like, what is the true issue, what's the problem, and why hasn't it been solved? Because in other instances, you may be trying to solve a problem that's already been solved, and it's very difficult to really sell a product or introduce a product or market a product if that problem hasn't been solved. So I've invested in businesses, and so as I invest in businesses, I want to know, is it your problem or is it the world's problems? Because the more people have a problem, the more I want to look at investing in it and helping you resolve that issue with your particular product or service. So speaking of that, so then let's look at your business profile. What is your product or service? Now, one of the things that I always tell people, and I had this conversation yesterday with a group who did a pitch, and you may not necessarily be selling your product or service. There's something intrinsic, an intrinsic benefit that's inside of your product or service that you're selling. And so a lot of times people don't get that. So one good example is H&R Block, the tax company. And on the surface, you say, oh, they do taxes, right? And that's how they make their money, and that's why people go to them. And it's like, no, that's not why people go to them. People go to H&R Block for refund anticipation loans. And the product or service that they sell just happens to be a tax return that helps people get that, right? So I'm more interested. So if I'm H&R Block, I'm not necessarily advertising my tax services as more as I'm advertising my refund anticipation loan, because that's what the people want. Now, the product that I use to lead with that, and what people see them as, is a tax preparation company, but they're not. And then I use just a very simple example in terms of McDonald's. Very consistent food, moderately priced, food made for the masses, not great food, but very consistent. And really, if you go into McDonald's, it's so convenient, right? It's convenient, it's consistent, you know what to expect every time. So if you get a mediocre burger in Chicago, when you go to San Francisco, you're going to get that same mediocre burger, and it's going to taste the same. But what it is they're all over the place, and they're easy to get, and they really, really thrive on convenience, right? I can go into that drive-through, uh, make the order at window number one, and by the time I get to window number two, they're throwing the food in my face. And that, if I'm in a hurry, that works really well, right? Now, me personally, I'd rather starve than go to McDonald's, but it works well for the McDonald's consumer. So think about it, like, in this whole mechanism, how is all this stuff working? What is the process for this? Because as an investor, I want to know, investors do want to know this. How is all this working? And it can get very complex. And some, especially the more money you ask for, the more detail they want. Then, how much is this going to cost? Right? So you have to be selling the product for more than it's taking you to make it. And this is once again where people fail in terms of finances, because part of the finances is making sure that your business can actually make money, even if it isn't making money today, that you can at some point scale up and earn money. But a lot of businesses don't really think about what the cost of delivering their products or services are, and because it's not well documented. And so I find in many cases, especially in small businesses, where they don't even figure in their own labor. And it's like, well, you have to. It's like, well, no, I'm doing it, so labor's free. At some point, you're going to expand and you have to pay for labor, and that's not built in. And either you're going to lose money, or you have to raise prices to a point where the customer says, now it's too expensive. So you have to be really honest with yourself and do a really deep dive into the numbers to make sure you understand how much your product costs. And even one of the projects we're doing now, uh, we're able to make a gross margin on it. But at the early stages, I was saying I'm willing to break even or lose a few dollars just to get it on the market, because we only make money when we scale up. And so that's also why you have to make sure you have your finances together, that you have enough money to get to that point to be able to scale up to get the prices cheaper. And then where will you sell your product? So there are so many ways that you can, and places you can sell product. We do a lot of work with food businesses, and a lot of people come to us and say, "Oh, we want to get into like Whole Foods, we want to get into Jewel Osco," and this is really critical because not every product is a Whole Foods product, but then again, not every product is a Jewel Osco product. And so one of the clients that we had, they had this very expensive olive oil. It was $25 a bottle, imported from Greece, some really good, flavored olive oils. And it was almost like the fine wine of olive oils. And he was considering himself an olive oil, what is that, sommelier, they have tastings and things like that. He got into like 300 Joel Oscos. And so, but Joel Osco customers do not pay $25 for olive oil. And so shipped all these products out to distribution centers through his distributor, and ended up, most of them came back because no one purchased them. So the point of it is that it's not important, distribution to a lot of places, a lot of stores is actually meaningless if the people, your customers, your target market, don't shop at those stores, right? And so to me, that product was a stronger product for, of course, some specialty grocery stores, or even more of an online product. So that, you really have to think about that. Like, where does my product really fit in terms of where I can sell it? Because the investors are going to be very interested in that as well. In some instances, you have a product that's just too expensive for an online, for like a regular retailer. And even if they allow you in, it doesn't mean that you're going to make money. You get all these sales, and then your distributor will return those products to you or destroy them because they went outdated, and then send you a bill. So those are important things to think about as you're scaling up and looking to get into different outlets and establishments. All right, and so if you have a problem and you state a problem, there should be a solution to that problem. So how does your business directly or indirectly solve the problem that you have identified? And then what are the unique features of your product or service? And why are you different? And why do people need to use your product or service? And that's a good point, because a lot of times people say, oh, there's these wants and there's these needs, right? People really buy stuff because there's some need for it, even if it can be some need that's not even related to the product itself. Sometimes people buy stuff and pay more money for stuff because it's a status symbol, or it makes them feel good about themselves. And we'll talk about that a little later, because those are really some of the more important characteristics of why people buy. And so the people, you'll find that your sales increase, and your product spreads more, and people talk more about it when you can really uncover a distinct, definite need that your product can solve. And people really, really latch onto that and say, I really, really need this product. And that's when they come, they buy, they repeat buy, and then they also tell others about it, which is even more important. They're telling others about it, and that helps you increase your sales. And then visuals. And these visuals are super, super important. And, the old saying is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that's so true in anything that you do. And one of the challenges that I had, and I was doing one pitch, and someone asked me to do a 7-minute pitch presentation using no bullet points and only pictures. And I suggest everybody do that for their business. Be able to tell your business story without any words. So part of it is the words that you on the slide. So part of it is the words that come from you are, as you're talking, those are your words, but it also forces you to know a lot more about your business. And it also becomes more genuine as you tell the story. And that's important as well. Um, and I've seen pictures and it's like people don't show their product or their service in action. And it's like, well, how would I know? And if you're a food vendor, especially if a food business, and if you're in an in-person meeting, show up with some of your food. You talk about, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And, the potential investor don't know because you forgot to bring samples. But it's also critical, especially when you have things that are kind of mechanical. The audience really want to know how that process and how your things are going to work, and to help them visualize that stuff. And the more you can get people to visualize and really feel internally what you're trying to do, what you're trying to sell, and they can see the pictures, they can see the process, and they can see the mechanism, then it makes it so much easier for them to say, okay, I'm even more interested in it now because I actually understand this. Then the business model. And that's really critical because you solve the problem, and there's no point in solving a problem if you can't make money, right? So what is the primary way that you're making money with your business? And include how much you charge. So what we normally do when we're doing pitching to an investor, we start off with here's what we're going to charge for the services. And then the second line, here's our cost of goods. And so it's really important for investors to know what that gross margin is, right? And for this presentation, I'm trying to keep I don't want to include a lot of like technical terms and things like that because we're just doing more of an overview. But, as simple as how much you're selling this for, and then how much you paying to get it. And that's why I say it's really important to understand what is your cost of goods or what are your costs of delivering the services, because that's the only way you're going to know that you're making enough money to, first of all, cover that. And then secondly, you need money left over to pay expenses. Uh, and so then also think about how you can make money on other things. And you'll see like a lot of companies, they have these intros and then they have all these add-ons. So, hey, you want to buy our base service? Yes. But they may make very little money on the base service, or they may give it away for free. But they are counting on you saying, okay, but I need this add-on and I need that add-on. An easy example is QuickBooks. The basic QuickBooks can cost you $30 a month. But then you look at it and say, okay, you want payroll? Okay, that's extra. Or you want to manage inventory? Okay, that's extra. You want, extra bookkeeping services? Okay, that's extra. So you see these add-ons, these add-ons. These are ways that companies make money, and these are the things that you need to think about in terms of how do you take this product or service that you're delivering and make additional dollars off of it. Uh, and I gave was like a very simple example. Here's a camera company that charges $1,000 for a camera, but then let's do photo lessons, right? And teach people how to use their cameras, and we can make $80 an hour. So now that we got them in the door, what are other ways that we can upsell to earn money? And so when you're doing a revenue model, you list all of these. You have what are your primary ways of making money? Okay, we sell cameras. We make 30% margin on the cameras or whatever it is. Then we charge $80 an hour to teach people how to use their cameras. I may pay a photographer $40 an hour to teach, and I keep 40, or I may pay him 60 and keep 20. But those are good business models, right? And so as you start detailing your business model, detail how you're going to make the money and what are your revenue sources. The one project that we're working on now, purchasing a manufacturing company, a meat manufacturing company, and there's probably like 50 customers. We have to list all 50 customers, how much we charge each customer for each separate product that they order, and then what are our costs of goods on each one of those. And it can get even more sophisticated because since we're manufacturing, we also look at, well, what is our production capacity? Because we can't say we're going to make $1 million a year, whatever number it is. I'm just using an arbitrary number. we're going to make $1 million a year. But when we look at our capacity, we can only make $500,000 based on capacity. And investors catch that. And I've seen it happen. It's like someone says, hey, I'm going to make $1 million selling these items. And then I look at the inventory and I say, well, you only purchased $200,000 worth of inventory. So, that's impossible. And so these are really simple things that a lot of times people take for granted when they're putting together their business models that you really have to think about. And investors catch these really quick because they're very savvy and they've seen enough of these pitches and they've seen enough of the finances to understand where the deficiencies can be. They can go right to them. And then competition. Uh, One of the things I hear far too often is that I have no competition. If someone says to me they have no competition, they would never get my money. And any investor that I work with, I can guarantee you that will never get that investor's money. You have competition. No matter what product or service you're doing, you're going to have competition. So take that as a fact, but also take that as a good thing because I say competition gives you something to start with in terms of building your business model. So number one, if there's competitors in the market, I say that's proof of concept. If there are companies in the market selling something similar to what I'm selling, that means there's a market for it. I don't know, it could not be a great market, but people are selling into the market, there's a market for it. And then I look at it and say, okay, now that I know there's a market for it, looking at the competitors and then saying, what are they not doing well? Because I know if I can figure out what they're not doing well and that my customers understand that and that customers have a need for somebody to do it a little better, then that gives me an opportunity to say, okay, this is why we can take over some market share. But a lot of times people think they're just going to walk in and take over market share because, hey, my product, it tastes better. And that's not necessarily true. Or I think it works better. You have to make sure that your potential customers validate that. And once again, it gets down to research. And another thing people do in their pitch decks is they have these check boxes, and they say, they check all the boxes, and their competitors don't check any. But your competitors are selling a lot more product than you. So apparently, you're not checking the boxes right. So don't really think about, we have a better price because price is not necessarily what's going to sell. Even when you have price, you want to justify your price. It's easier to charge more if you add more value to what you're doing and you can convince the customer that you add more value to it. And then checking the box and saying, well, we're the lowest price means absolutely nothing either. Because the lowest price doesn't necessarily mean that you have a competitive product. It could mean that you put less less rigor into your product or your service, and that means now that people are not getting their money's worth. So don't really think about it from and I say from a competitive standpoint, a lot of times people look at it and say, I have to like benchmark myself against the competition. It's good to study the competition, but at the end of the day, you have to stand on your own and you have to give people compelling reasons to purchase your product. And the competition is a good start for understanding what the market needs, but it's really very important that you stand out from the marketplace. And just even thinking about like getting back to this concept of competition. So a lot of times, people don't look at what are the indirect competitors. So when we're selling a product that had vitamin D and calcium in it, and first of all, our competition was vitamin water, Shelby Life water, and we were on the shelf right next to them. But then you look at it and say, well, who are some of the indirect competitors? Well, if we're promoting vitamin D and calcium and the others didn't have vitamin D and calcium, what else has vitamin D and calcium? Well, milk does. So technically, milk is an indirect competitor to our product. And because people can go to milk, and one of the big, big reasons you drink milk is to get the vitamin D and calcium. So you won't find it on the shelf next to our product, but it certainly is a substitute. People can take pills. So one time I had this guy ask me, he's like, well, why would I drink your drink when I can just go take a pill that's much cheaper? And I said, well, you're not my target market because there's some people who actually would prefer to have their vitamins in a drink and have a good refreshing drink as opposed to taking a pill. And just think about it, even people who use products very similar to yours that have the same needs that product is offering in terms of solving a problem, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the market for it. And so you have to be really careful about that. You can't sell to everybody, even if they have a particular need state that your product solves. Um, so then we look at your target market, and that's really the place that you get at, and like, how do I convince people to buy? And so we start looking at, and it's been very popular in the past to look at demographic data like location. So, the needs of a suburban person, family may be different from the needs of a city family, right? Population, talk a little bit about that. Age plays a big in fashion. Younger people don't wear the same thing as older people. It could be occupation, it could be the education. These things are really important. Personalities. There's personality types buy different things for different reasons. You have a sports enthusiast. You can sell a lot of things to a sports enthusiast in terms of clothes and equipment and things like that. But somebody who's not really interested would not be interested in it at all. Or you have people who are not sports enthusiasts like wearing sporty clothes. So you really have to understand who your market is and why are you promoting to them. And then income. But income doesn't always necessarily translate like higher income than higher price, right? Because we go down to like looking at the example of Air Jordans. They are purchased a lot in communities that could at least afford to spend over $200 for a pair of shoes. But you see that very prevalent in communities like that. But at the same token, you can go to a very wealthy community and people are like, I don't want to spend a lot of money on stuff. You may find that they don't necessarily like spending tons of money on things because they're more frugal with their dollars and they're being very careful about how they spend it, right? And they may want to invest more of their dollars. So income itself is not necessarily a marker of how people would definitely purchase. And we get down to the fifth one, behavior. And that's the one I highlighted because these days, behavior is much more important than, to me, any of the other demographic factors. So it's really nice to say, uh, our African American woman between the ages of 25 and 35, who's college educated, living in a condo in the city, is da 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 da, and all this other stuff. And she's going to purchase, right? But when you get down to behavior, it's easier to think more about people as a whole, as opposed to thinking as people as an individual. So if we start looking at behavior patterns, they become much more important in terms of who will buy your product and why they buy it. And so what you want to do is you start pitching to investors. Talk more about the behavior patterns of your target market, not necessarily the demographic patterns. Because we'll find that with demographic patterns, there are always exceptions to the rule. Behavior patterns are much more predictable because, you have these people, and we can lump them into areas like we have the early adopters, people who always want to try something new, right? So why is it that people, when you look at when Apple used to, and I don't know if they still do it, but when they release a new iPhone, why would people of all walks of life stand in line for 24 hours overnight to get the next iPhone, considering I already have a phone? So their phone isn't broken, right? The phone works well. It does everything it needs to do, but they'll stand in line for, overnight, want to be the first ones to get a new product. Where if you wait 3 weeks, you can probably just order online and go to the Verizon store and get one. And so, but this talks more about the brand preferences, loyalty of customers. And this is what you really want to be able to understand more of. Why people buy, why do they continue to buy, and how do you get them to latch onto your product and want to buy that? And once you solve that issue, it's a lot easier to get investors to say yes. And so now it really depends on if you're doing consumer business, that's one, right? But what if you're doing business to business? Well, then you really want to look at like this one deal that we're working on now. we're looking at the trends in the marketplace. And what we're selling investors on is that actually, even though we're selling to another business, we're doing contract manufacturing for a business, that business sells to the marketplace. So our pitch deck really talks about the behavioral trends in the marketplace for the products that we would manufacture. And so it really still gets down to people and people behavior patterns. And so what we're finding is that for the particular product that we're making, I don't want to talk about it right now because it's still in the secretive stage. But these, the target market is looking for certain characteristics of a food product, and and there's a shortage of manufacturing capability in that. So we're raising money to build that capacity. But it really gets down to the behavior patterns. It has nothing to do with the location, the population, the personality, or the income. All right, and then sales projections. This is one that a lot of people have a lot of issues with, and this is one that's holding up my deal right now. Are the sales projections, because one investor is saying, "I don't believe your numbers," right? And most of them will, if your numbers are too good to be true, investors are not going to believe your numbers. Now, I've done everything to prove to, I feel that I've done everything to prove to him that my numbers are actually believable, including looking at historical data. Uh, but they're saying, I need more proof. And so now what we're doing is we're going out, getting letters of intent from potential customers. We're showing how our current customers want to purchase more. We're showing a letter of intent from actually Amazon saying, November 1st, we want you to ship X amount of this product to us for one of our brands. And so having that type of information helps. So if you're going to tell somebody I'm going to do $1 million in sales year one, how can you prove to someone that you're going to actually do $1 million in sales? And you say, well, I just pulled a number out the hat because $1 million is a nice round number. I want to be a 7-figure income business. So I figured that's why we start. That's our aspiration. And then an investor's going to turn around and say, all right, now fill in the blanks. How did you come to that number? And if you say, I just pulled it out of my hat, then it's not going to work. So just think about it. When you are doing this, you need to have some data and something to back up to say these sales projections make sense. Now, most investors know that you will not hit those projections that you have, but at least being able to justify those projections makes them feel a lot more comfortable in saying it's doable, even if it doesn't happen. And then one of the questions was about the seasonality issue. So what does sales look like on a month-to-month basis? So in this particular company that we're looking to purchase and invest in, we ran the numbers, and basically there's no seasonality, which is really good. That means that cash is flowing in at a good clip all the time. Now, the other thing, though, is if it is seasonal, you really have to think about how do you manage cash flow, which is important too. So just a lot of stuff goes into this in terms of just the homework that you need to be able to pitch to an investor. And if you're pitching to a bank, it's going to be very similar. I don't think banks are really as hard on it as because the banks are going to have some other assurances that you're going to pay them back. A good credit score, a good cash flow, and if it's too much money, they're going to want collateral. So they don't have to look at your situation as hard as an investor would, because an investor is saying, I'm giving you this money and I may not see any return, or I may see a return 5 years down the road, but I really don't have much to back this up. So the only thing I can have backing it up is the fact that the work has been done to prove that this is actually a viable business model. And then the income statement, we talked about this a little bit before, but everybody is looking at, they're looking at number one, profitability, and also cash flow. The income statement will show and should show that at some point, this business can actually make a profit. And so, an example here is a product business, because I do a lot of product businesses and work with them. but we do these projections, and basically going to do it on a month-to-month basis to show if there's any seasonality to show how that operates. But the bottom line is, an investor is looking at it, you got to have somewhere in the 10 to 15% profit if they're projected, if they're going to be interested in selling and investing. But once again, you have to really think about it. Is that these numbers, you can't just throw in the numbers to make it work. Because I was asked at one time, it's like, well, did you just make up these numbers to make it work like this? And I have to go back and say, no, but if we look at historical data, da, 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 da. And so this should happen. So once again, you have to back that up. All right, so then the marketing plan. Talked a little bit about the target market and target customer. But when you start looking at it, you also want to include, once again, the pictures is worth 1,000 words. Showing that target customer using your product, using your service, really, really important. And then think about the ways that you're going to market your product or service. And I know there's a lot of, people can get very, broad and talk about social media. And one of the things that I see is, when people are using more CAN programs, they include like television advertising and stuff like that, which newspapers, magazines. So don't include stuff like that unless you're really going to use it. But just really think about ways are you going to use it, but also why do you think there's going to be effective? Do you have any proof right now? So if you have a Facebook page and you say, well, I have 10,000 followers, and is there a way that you can show that those 10,000 followers have translated into sales? Have you been able to monetize that? In social media, are you bringing more people into, are you increasing your social media following? But more important, once again, how are you going to monetize that? So when you look at marketing is an investment, right? So a lot of times people spend money and spend time and effort on marketing when they don't really think about what's their return on investment. And so for me, if you're saying that I'm going to spend, 10% of revenue on marketing, I want to see how you feel that that's going to be effective. Have you done anything to show that your marketing techniques can be more effective in terms of bringing in sales? If not, then what is the true purpose of doing it? Now, I will say the businesses that with my consulting business, I've said this in some of my other presentations, we don't market at all. We do very little social media, but we have more business than we can handle because our marketing plan is to do a good job and let others market for us. And it's been very successful. All right. So at some point, they're going to look for an exit, right? And so you need to scale the business. So, I'm going to give some tips at the end, but one of the things that's most important is that investors want to know that you plan on growing this business. You want to use this money to grow the business, not to pay yourselves a good salary, not to drive a fancy car, but you're going to use this money to actually put into the business, to scale this business. So 5 years from now, or whenever they want to get out, they're going to get out much more money than they put into it. So think about new products, new services, and give some examples. Is there any potential partnerships that you can do to help grow your business? New distribution ways. So one of the things that we're working on in our pitch deck is we put together this really, I feel is a really tight business model, right? And it says, okay, we see the growth, and a lot of the growth is just based on adding capacity. And so then the next thing, and then we talked about this, like this climax, right? And I build it up and say, okay, we're going to make X amount of dollars. And then the next slide, I say, but I didn't even include this. Here's a new opportunity. And then I have this LOI from Amazon saying, okay, we plan on purchasing X amount of dollars from you this year and then X amount next year. Now, the numbers work with what I projected, but then I got that big surprise that I hit them with. And I have a friend that I work with, and we do a lot of coaching or pitching. And so what you want to do at the end of the pitch, and these are his words, and certainly not mine, but he said, at the end of the pitch, you want the investor to say, take my money. You've done such a great job, take my money, right? And so it's really important to have that, and that one last thing that I never even talked about and here it is, and this is why you're going to invest in this business. So for us, it's the Amazon. It's like, these numbers look great. They're in line with industry standards. And guess what? We have a brand new opportunity that could actually double the business. And, 5 years from now, we show them. So 5 years from now, this is your return. And investors are looking for, and it's industry dependent, but they're looking for somewhere between 5 to 10x return, depending on the industry. 5 to 10x return on investment. So if an investor put in $300,000, more than likely he wants to make at least 1.5 million, if not 3 million, right? But so this is all part of scaling. You can't do that unless you scale. So to have a clear-cut plan in terms of how you're going to grow the business and how you're going to scale the business is super important. All right, and we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to we can have more than enough time for questions and answers, but the next side of it is your team. So you start with yourself, and what experiences do you have, and what are you bringing to the table? So in our deal right now that we're working on, the experience that I have is that I have worked in the food business for quite some time. I worked in food manufacturing, and I understand all the USDA requirements for manufacturing food, and even worked with the FDA in terms of working with pharmaceutical companies and introducing new drugs to the marketplace, and have a lot of management experience and da 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 da, right? And so, and you don't necessarily have to have all that experience. What are my weak points? I'm not good at marketing, so I found other ways to do it, right? But since I'm not great at marketing, I have people on my team who are great at marketing. And so even when you're building a team, it doesn't have to necessarily be people you're paying for to do this, but you want to have people on your team who can advise you and say, hey, if you're going to do a marketing program, here's the best way to do it. If you don't understand financials, which is really, really important, you should have somebody on your team who really does and who can help you build those projections and help you understand if your projections are realistic. And then secondly, which is really another important point, is that you really need to have really tight control of your financials. And so one investment that every business owner should make is in a really good bookkeeper to make sure everything is in the place it needs to be in. So when you run reports, it's easy enough for people to get those reports and understand those reports. Excuse me. For example, if I said, can you give me your profit loss statement for 2020, 2019, and year date 2021? Can you click a couple of buttons and have that to me in less than 5 minutes? If the answer is no, then you're not keeping good track of your finances. If I ask for your 2018, 2019, and 2020 tax returns, can you pull those up right now and send them to me? If you can't, you don't have good control of your finances. And so, and these are the issues that we run into. Even this one deal that we're doing and the company that we're interested in purchasing, they have two businesses and they put everything together and they're trying to sell one business. And so every time I ask them for some financial data, it's like, well, we have to separate the numbers. And we'll get back to you in a week. That is not the way you run a business. If I ask you, what is your profit loss, this month, you should be able to tell me that just by going in and clicking a few buttons and saying, here's how much I'm making. So that means that you shouldn't be doing your bookkeeping on an Excel spreadsheet. That you should be doing it in some type of financial program that can generate results for you and data for you just as quick as you need them. But it also means that that bookkeeper on your team should always have that updated. And if you don't have a good bookkeeper and you're looking for investment capital, I say you really need to get one. And then why should people trust you? And sometimes entrepreneurs can get a little modest, and some of them are not as modest, right? But you also want to brag a little about yourself and pump yourself up and talk about the things that you've done and talk about the accomplishments that you have done in your past experiences, because those are the things that make investors a lot more comfortable with you. And in terms of, should I invest in this? And because you really should believe in yourself and you're asking them to believe in you. So yeah, get a little arrogant, stick out your chest and say, yeah, I can do this. And really, but just show you've done it before, you've done something similar. All right, and then the hard close. And I've seen a lot of pitches and say, okay, thank you, any questions? But what you really want to do is this hard close. It's like, you know, this is Shelby Parchman, and we're ready to serve you the best chicken sausage you ever tasted. I do have a chicken sausage company, and that's one of the things that you really think about too, is that when you walk away from something, you want to. It's all we call it the mic drop, right? And so that's what you really should do. You should drop the mic there, and just hopefully leave those potential investors mesmerized, where they want to say, "Yeah, I need to know more." All right, so let's talk about some helpful hints. Uh, Number one, the purpose of your pitch is not to answer all the possible questions nor close the immediate investment. We talked about that, right? It's really to think about, how do I get to the yes? Then secondly, it's open to the minds of investors to understand your vision and getting them excited to know a lot more about what you're doing. So even in the Shark Tank, the yes is like, I'm interested. The story you craft in your deck gets them engaged and start filling in the blanks for themselves. And then you want to give them enough information to grab their interest, but not too much, right? And part of it is you only have a short period of time to pitch. Usually they're 5 to 7 minutes. Get them enough to be excited about, but leave them wanting more. That's telling a good story. A compelling deck, it tells a concise story, and it should be very visual, and it should be no more than 13 slides. Don't have too many slides and too much information. And the other one I'll credit to him, he calls it slide vomit, which we're going to talk about that in a couple of seconds. Wordy slides, right? So this slide is a great example of one is super wordy. But as you can see, the trick that I use is that I just brought one point in at a time, right? So as you're talking to investors, you hit one point, then you click, hit the next point, click, hit the next point, and building up on that. So a way to get around a wordy slide is not to throw everything on the slide at one time, but just to bring one point in at a time, just like I did here. And then the slide doesn't look so wordy until I'm done. But the potential investor is not trying to read the entire slide where you're talking. Too many product details, too many financial details, and belittling your competitors. That really doesn't work. I mean, telling why you're better than the competitors is not belittling them, but saying, oh, their products are horrible, that's belittling them. And we talked about data, having all these assumptions that you can't back up. You're going to get called on that. So if you present data, you should have a source and say, in little thing, here's where I got my data from. So if you want to look it up, please do so. False confidence or arrogance, right? It's always good to be arrogant, but make sure you can back that up. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about we talked in a description, I talked about in the description of this webinar, I talked about there's a big push towards putting capital into minority-owned businesses. And so I want to talk about one of the partners that we've worked with, and that's Cleveland Avenue, which is an organization founded by Don Thompson, who was the former CEO of McDonald's. And they partnered with the state treasurer's office to develop this $70 million fund called Cast Us. And so I went on their website. We've had some talks in terms of how we can partner and bring more people into this program. And so just looking at their website and their pitch, right? They came up with a problem. Here's a problem. 80% of the capital needs of Black and Latinx entrepreneurs in Chicago go unmet, compared to 46% of white-owned businesses. That's a big difference. There's a gap of at least $146 million between supply and demand for equity capital among Black and Latinx entrepreneurship in Chicago. So the $70 million ain't even filling half the problem in terms of solution. And then there are too few equity capital providers of scale focused on entrepreneurs of color and providing the type of capital required by their businesses. So there's a nice three-pronged problem. And then there's a nice solution to it. So they have a $70 million fund where 75% of it will be invested in Black and Latinx owned companies. Then 75% will be invested on the south and west side of Chicago. And then 50% they want to go to women entrepreneurs. And they've made a couple of investments already, and they're looking to do more. And I did a talk, at least a fireside chat with Andrew Zopp, who's one of the managing partners of that fund. And we talked about the what they're looking for in terms of the fund. And I'll see if I can find, there should be a link somewhere that I should be able to find and send out to the city, and maybe they can share it with you guys. But this fund is pretty much new, but they're really looking to invest in entrepreneurs of color and women entrepreneurs. And there are a lot of funds around like that. There are a lot of organizations interested in doing that. And so this is a good time to start thinking about, if you want to raise capital for your business, this is a good time to really start wrapping your mind around that. All right, and then I say, let's see the pitch in action. Here's some examples of some good pitches. I'm not going to show them in the interest of time, but what I did was I actually spelled out the entire URL so you guys could actually go take a look at it in time. Most of them are just 5 to 7 minutes, so they're pretty short pitches, but they're really good ones. All right, so now that you knocked it out the park, the investor says, I'm interested, they're very excited, and you say, yes, where's the check? And they say, ho, slow down, wait 1 second. Before I write that check, I need to know a few things. And that is the due diligence. And this is what you don't see on Shark Tank. Because now, what is due diligence? They want to make sure that everything that you said in that deck actually rings true. When we go back to that Shark Tank deck, and it's like, people lied about their financials. Yeah, we're selling $1 million worth of this stuff, and you really aren't, right? So this is a part of it that takes forever. As a matter of fact, my deal, we've basically been in due diligence for about 4 months now, and almost there. And we can do all this, and investors can say, it's pretty good, but it's not really for us, right? So part of it is when you get into this point of due diligence, and banks do it as well, right? So if you say, I want a bank loan, we send you our due diligence form. It says, we need your last 2 years tax returns, we need this, we need that, we need this. So that's the due diligence. And then we go and we look at this and we verify all the information is true. We check to see if you have any outstanding liens or anything like that. So now but in the investor world, due diligence can be a lot more. And so it starts with having your finances together so that you can actually make this process go a lot quicker. So what is involved in due diligence? So part of it, and the most important one, is the financial. And so they want to know is like, where, let me look at your bank account. Let me look at your profit loss statement. Let me look at your accounts payables. Let me look at your accounts receivables. How much money you're spending on this? How much money you're spending on that? What are your costs of goods? What happens if this happens? Most importantly, the finances have to be tight. Legal, there's so many things that go in there. Number one is, are there any liens on your property? Have you been sued recently? Are there any other things that we need to think about? And I'll give you a bigger example is that my wife is an attorney, and she's been working on closing this deal with her company. Navistar got bought out by Volkswagen's truck division. This due diligence process took a year, and they just closed the deal yesterday. In a smaller business, it still could take months, and so it could be very complex. Are there any outstanding contracts? Are those contracts that you have for manufacturing, are they transferable to the new entity? And here's another big one. For those who have went out and received EIDL loans, which these are SBA loans, and also the PPP loans. The SBA has put a lien on all your business assets. So that means that you cannot do an asset sale, transfer your assets or sell your business without resolving those issues with the SBA. Secondly, even on the banking side, so if you're going out to get a bank loan, and they say they want to put a lien on your assets, a UCC filing, well, the SBA has already beat them to it. So now you really don't have any collateral, business collateral. And so these are some of the things that you really want to think about. And as you start getting your business together for investment capital, are there any other partners or any side deals a partner made? So many things. What about leases? If you have leases, are they transferable to the new company? So in the due diligence portion, there are so many things to think about, and it could make or break a deal. All right, and so we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to give you 8 tips for raising capital. Number 1, understand your business and how much money you make. Very important. Have clear and documented financials. Understand the type of capital you need, because some people, although you think you need equity investment, you really need a bank loan. Develop a clear and concise pitch deck. We talked about that a lot. Have a clear ask and use of funds. I'm asking for $1.5 million, and this is what I'm going to do with it, to the penny. Think big or go to a bank. That gets down to scale. If you want to scale the business, you may need investors. If you're just saying, I just want to operate this business and I don't really want to grow it to just a small operation, that's bank loan. That's not investment capital. And be prepared to answer tough questions. And you say, Shelby, that's only 7. You can't count. Final one. Network like you don't have any connections. And that gets back to finding that one rich friend to say, I believe in you. I'm going to seed your business, and then I'm going to convince others to do so. All right, so now we'll open it up for questions, if there are any.
Hi, Shelby. You do have a few questions.
Okay. Okay, so I'm in the chat box, so let's see. I'm looking to create an equity crowdfunding portal to help social equity applicants attain funding for cannabis business. Oh, it jumped. I'm sorry. For cannabis business enterprises. Oh my, I'm sorry, I think questions are coming in. It keeps jumping. So let me see if I can expand it a little. Oh, so for cannabis business enterprise for non-accredited investors. And I would like to know if InUrban Strategies could possibly assist me in some way with the technical and business support for this project. That answer is yes. Certainly, we're not here to sell our services. We're here just to give a presentation. But if that's something you're interested in, you can send us an email at info@inurbanstrategies.com, and someone will get back to you, and we will be happy to work with you. Elvira asked a question, how do you know if the problem you're trying to solve is too small, not worthwhile to be in business? That's where the research comes in, and you have to really understand. That's why it's really important to understand your market. And there's no magic formula to that. It takes a lot of research. It takes talking to people. And that's why we get down to that competitive analysis and say, well, there are competitors in the marketplace, and what are they really doing, and how well are they doing in the market? But what you should see, even on a smaller scale, you should see enough people who are interested in your product or service that you feel comfortable that there is a way of there is a market there. But that's what a lot of people really wrestle with. Is like, is there a big enough market? And what we see a lot of times is there really isn't a big enough market. But one of the things is you should understand that before you go into business, not after you go into business. Okay, Elvira, you have a second question. Is it best to be passionate about the problem you're trying to solve as an entrepreneur? If you don't have the passion, don't do it. I always tell people, in business, it's more than likely you're not going to make money. So you better be passionate about it, have a lot of fun doing it, because if you're not making money, it should be some other intrinsic thing in it for you. The fact that you make money makes it a whole lot easier. Jatan asked, where do you get these demographics? Sorry, it keeps jumping. Where do you get these demographics of target market? There's a lot of places. There are a lot of places you can get the demographics. You start with there's a lot of online sites that you say, okay, if I'm operating in a certain area, what does the area look like? And so to me, it's just a lot of the way I get numbers is I'm good at Google searches. And if you Google search enough, you can find enough free information to talk about whatever market that you're interested in, at least get enough information to say, okay, this is what I feel about the target market. But also, and I talked about that term more, psychographics, and that's really understanding the buyers. And so what I do, and I tell people like this, like do very little posting on social media, but I spend a lot of time on social media. And I spend a lot of time understanding people's behavior patterns. And that really makes it easier for me to think about like the marketing side of things and making suggestions to my marketing team. Okay, Jessica asked, I understand what needs to be done, but this is a lot of work. Yes, it is, Jessica. Who can a startup business person in the ideation phase work with to get these financial projections? So, Jessica, there are a lot of organizations that are out there who work with small businesses when they're in the ideation phase. I know Sunshine Enterprises is one. I used to work for them. The Chicago Urban League on the west side. There's uh, west side for it used to be Bethel New Life. There's New Covenant CDC. On the north side, there's Rogers Park Business Association or something like that. So there's a lot of people, of individuals, and I believe most of them they're MBDCs that are funded by BACP. So there are a lot of organizations that are scattered around this city in different neighborhoods who can help you with that. Do you have any tips for funding in the cannabis industry? Yes, have some rich friends. The cannabis industry is pretty tough because it's still not federally approved. So cannabis has to be like a very tight market. In most instances, you can't even go across state lines. So you have to find investors and funding that's inside. Banks can't lend you money. So you really have to find investors who are particularly interested in the cannabis industry. Is there financing for service? This is Kathleen, for service/agency businesses. There's financing for any business. It just really depends on the types of financing you need and the amounts of financing. So that's something that you want to think about, like how much money do I need and what I'm trying to do. Once again, if you're looking at investor capital, it's more about scaling up a business. So even like my consulting firm is not a business that I would ask anybody to invest in, right? Because we do our services. But if I'm a pest control business, I could say, okay, I want to expand this, into multiple states. Now that's investors are interested. We have a chicken sausage business. We don't have any investors yet. We may go out for investment capital, but we're saying we're expanding our production nationwide as opposed to being local in Chicago. Maria, can you put the slide with the pitch examples? So I don't want to go back to that, but this will be well, I'll quickly go back to that because I can have that slide on there. I'm sorry. And this also will be available on YouTube, is my understanding. All right. As Ramona, for a home educational consulting and family support program, are there grants to help me besides a private investor? Okay, so if you are the grants are usually going to nonprofit organizations, or if you're a for-profit organization, you can partner with a nonprofit organization as a fiscal sponsor. So my organization has done that in InUrban Strategies. We've actually, last year, we partnered with a nonprofit organization to get grants to help do food distribution. So the fiscal sponsor receives the money, they give it to us to do the work. But that's how we do a lot of our work as well. So if you're doing consulting business and you're looking for grants, usually most of them go to nonprofit organizations, but you can also partner with a for-profit organization to as a fiscal sponsor. We are in the point of writing a business plan for submission to the SBA and my other bankers. Can we ask you to do it for us? We don't write business plans. We can help give guidance on business plans. And the reason that we don't write business plans is I feel that a business plan should be written by the person who's seeking capital. We can provide advice on what you need to add. And also, if we write a business plan, we charge probably more money than the bank would be willing to give you. And because it's a lot of work and it's something that we find it's very difficult to write a plan for something we're not really interested we don't have a stake in that business. But I always say, if you're going to write a business plan, do it yourself and ask someone to take a look at it. That we could do. And then Maria says, WBDC. Yeah, that's another agency that can help you do stuff. And once again, you can also tap into these agencies that they're neighborhood business development centers, and usually they have someone on staff to help you, assist you with the business plan process. So, and then once again, for us as an organization, we don't charge people to do work that they can find for little cost or find somewhere else. And so there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are actually funded by state and federal and city resources and city dollars. And so we have a tendency to point you in that direction because the startup business, we don't feel that you should be paying us to do something that you could actually do for free, because it's not about the money for us. Let's see. Is there any other? I don't see any other questions. I did see some other comments that look like they were in the chat. But let's see. I don't see any other.
There's a question in the chat box.
Could you read it for me? Because I can't see it.
Okay. I just started my business in December, but I'm not sure if I should start off with a bank loan, credit card, or find investors.
All right, so that is actually a good point, and we're going to talk about. I should talk about that because we go back to the slide that's like it starts with personal funds and probably bank loans, the second one. And so another issue that's going around that I notice as I keep doing my research online is there are a lot of organizations, companies that are starting up around. We'll help you get business credit. And the business credit turns out to be a credit card that may have a low interest rate of 0 or 1 point whatever percent as a teaser rate. Then it jumps up to 33%. And I've seen a lot of people apply for these and get into some serious trouble because you get this credit card and you run it up, and now you're paying 23 to 30% on money that you borrow. And there are a lot of lenders around, nonprofit lenders. CRF, Community Reinvestment Fund, is one. Axion is another. Chicago Neighborhood Initiatives is another. CIBC Bank is another. They actually have programs to help startup companies, and many times they'll lend up to $10,000 to a startup business and $25,000 to one that's been in business 2 years. And so all of them have programs, and I say seek out programs like that first, as opposed to trying to get a business credit card or a credit card, or put in the credit card period, because the cost of money is really, really high. All right, is there anything else? Oops.
Help facilitate, mentor, educate, and give back.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one.
How can I help facilitate, mentor, educate, and give back? I think this person is asking to work with your agency.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want information, okay, now I found the chat box. So, Jim, if you want to, you can always contact me. But there's always needs for people who to educate and mentor. I know our business is growing in terms of consulting. We're making a lot of connection and collaboration with nonprofit organizations, and always looking for people who want to give back. So you can certainly send me an email. info@inurbanstrategies.com, and I see you left your info as well. But it seems like, Jim, you're looking to help people, and I know there are a lot of people who need mentors in this area. Let me see, what are some financial software programs for bookkeeping for a service-based business? Number one, I use QuickBooks, and it's probably the most popular one, but there are others that are at little or no cost. I know Xero is another one. But if you Google the best accounting software programs, a bunch of them will come up. They all pretty much do the same thing, and the ease of use is there. I would say QuickBooks is probably a little more difficult than most. So if you're starting up, you could probably use some of the other ones that are a little easier to use and more intuitive and user friendly. Like Xero, I know I've used that one before. Then all of them, you can, if you decide to upgrade to QuickBooks, you can always download things in Excel spreadsheet and load it up to the into your new program. And we've done that for clients before as well. So you can start off with something, some of the free programs if you're not very complex, and then do more. As you upgrade, you can upload it. Please list those organizations or single source to connect with them. If you go on BACP's website, I'm sure they have a listing of all their neighborhood business development centers. This deck will be available online on YouTube. I think they put all the programs up. And then Jim says the SBA offer classes on writing your business plan. They do. And also some of these NBDCs will help you as well. Are there any other questions? I know we have about 2 minutes. I want everybody to get to enjoy their 4th of July holiday week. And I do appreciate those who've shown up, and these are some very good questions. And if you have any other questions, you can certainly reach out to me at info@inurbanstrategies.com. I just use info because it's a lot simpler to remember than trying to remember my entire name. So, but I really appreciate the city having me here today at BACP. And I appreciate everyone for their attention and their great questions. So with that, I will say goodbye and thank everyone, and I'll turn it back over to Stella.
Shelby, for your presentation. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program and would like to receive credit for today's webinar, please send us an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. Again, that's bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. To learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Again, it's chicago.gov/business education. This webinar will be posted on the BACP Chicago YouTube page. Thanks for joining us this morning, and enjoy your holiday. Bye.